people always ask me, well, how do you get started in this field and all this kind of stuff, and you just got to keep doing it. You
Yeah.
just got to keep pitching ideas, and your ideas are going to get turned down, and that's okay. You learn something from that experience, and you go back and you try again,
Yeah.
and each time you get a little bit better.
Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm your host, Lucas Servodio, and you'll be amused to know that I can't stop calling my wife Chef after binging season 2 of The Bear in less than 48 hours. Alas, we won't be discussing the adventures of Carmi Berzotto on today's pod. Instead, I'm honored to have Gab Chabran join us. Gab is the associate editor of food and culture at LAist. He's a Whittier native and a Long Beach resident, so he offers a diverse and far-reaching perspective on the amazing food one can discover across the Southland. Gab tells us the story of how his dual passions for music and food molded his professional journey and landed him in the driver's seat of one of LA's most respected food newsrooms. Gab's is a story of tenacity, perseverance, and of course, plenty of delicious food. We talk old school pizza parlors, new school burger pop-ups, and of course, what goes into making the perfect mixtape. Because what else would you want to learn on a food podcast? Without further ado, let's chow down. Joining us today on the pod is Gab Chabran, LAist associate editor of food and culture, all the way from Long Beach. How you doing today, Gab?
I'm great, Luca. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. We're recording this in the early afternoon, and you as a food critic, I would imagine have assignments to go out and eat things. Are you not a little lethargic after lunch?
This is usually the time when the energy levels definitely start to dip,
Yeah.
although that's usually with regards to like, responding to emails and Slack messages and what have you. So I think that, given that we're having this conversation, I'm sure that'll keep energy levels up. I got some water with me too. I've been experimenting with anytime I start to feel that energy level dip, around this time to just start chugging water. I read something on
Yeah.
Reddit that says that works. So far, so good. I got a little bike ride in today. So feeling the
Good for
oxygen
you.
through the veins. So yeah, yeah.
That makes sense with the water. I think it has to do with replenishing your cells. Like your cells like start to shrivel when you're low energy.
Yeah.
And I know that this isn't that bro podcast about how to take cold showers in order to revitalize your life, but that's a little
We're
tip for
getting
the
into some
listeners.
biohacking right now. We're gonna do
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
biohacking. Let's do it. I'm
Lit-
down.
little impromptu biohacking never hurt anybody. Curious, what did you have for lunch?
That is a horrible question for me today because I've just been busy with work. So I had a slice of cold pizza out of the fridge just because it's been back to back meetings all day. It's from a little spot called Mari's here in Long Beach, which I believe that's Marri apostrophe S, and I think it's been around for like 57 years. Myself and my
Wow.
family, we just visited for the first time. Yeah. And they do this really interesting thing. It's definitely like your more sort of traditional sort of pizzeria, American pizzeria, thicker crust kind of deal. But they do this really interesting thing, and I don't know the genesis behind it. Is they put all the toppings on the pizza and then they cover it with cheese. So as
Huh.
opposed to cheese and then toppings, so we were really interested in that fact, and it's a great little spot that's been there forever. I like going to older spots, especially dining experiences like that, just to get a little window into the past, as it were. I think between myself, my wife, and my daughter, we got out of there for like $68, or
Wow, that's
something like
great.
that. So yeah, yeah, and that was with wine and salad and pasta for the kid and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Jeez, good for
can't.
you. What are we talking here in terms of crust? Are we talking like Baronis, Casabianca, like that kind of old school
You,
Petrillos?
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is we got the antipasti as our side for it, and it was definitely reminiscent of Bianca in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
As we were discussing over email before, I lived in Highland Park for a long time, Northeast LA, and Casa Bianca is was a beloved spot for us. One of my favorite things about Casabianca is that like it's open kind of later too as well, that I don't think a lot of people know. And so like before we had kids, like it would just be a great place to like pop in at like 9 o'clock or something like that, and nobody would be there. The infamous crowds that we're all sort of used to outside of Bianca would be gone. So it'd be super easy to get a table there, and service was really fast and all that kind of stuff. So little pro tip if that's still going on.
I have a horrible confession, and that is I live in Highland Park, as we were discussing, and I have eaten Casabianca pizza many times takeout.
Yeah.
I am yet to
Okay.
dine in. I'm yet to dine
The
in, though.
the dining in experience is definitely like a good time. I would recommend like going with a group if you can, just because you know you could get like a big long table or one of the circular ones or something like that, and it's just you know big on the old timey you know pizzeria vibes as far as that goes.
Yeah,
What's your go to order at Bianca's? There is a
I
right
like.
answer. No, I'm just kidding.
I think there is a right answer. I think the right answer, if you're a Jonathan Gold acolyte and a Laurie Ochoa acolyte, then you got to go. I think with the eggplant parmesan and sausage combo,
Yeah,
and
that's the right
whatever
answer.
you add
That's
on
the right
top.
answer.
Yeah, right. Whatever you add on
Yeah.
top of that is kind of like gravy. If you want to get freaky with some anchovies or olives, that's fine too. But
Oh yeah.
you got to have that eggplant sausage combo.
Definitely, definitely. One of the undisputed LA pizza champions as far as I'm go. If you're going like old school in that respect, that and their antipasto, I think is just a perfect combination, you know.
Yeah, dude. Did you attend Pizza City Fest LA?
I didn't know, but I got a lot of PR emails about it though. So
Yeah.
but
Uh,
did you go?
I did. It was a cool event. Steve Dolinsky is a really great guy. The guy who put it, the Chicagoan who came to LA
Right,
and
right,
showed us
right.
how good our pizza is. Right. He's a really good guy, and the event they put together was very good. So when Steve was coming to town to sort of try all the pizzas, him and I got connected
Oh, cool.
because of my love for pizza, and he hit me up asking me what places should I try. And, I gave him a bunch of places, and he told me, well, I'm actually going to be in your neighborhood trying Casabianca and a couple other spots. Let's meet up. I met up with him right after he went to Casabianca, and he was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Not good pizza.
Wow. Yeah,
And
yeah. Interesting.
this is a pizza expert, right? He's a pizza guru. And when he
Mhm.
was telling me his, reasoning behind it, it makes sense when you're talking about technical execution. The crust is a little bit blonde on the bottom, right? It is a little bit, sometimes closer to pie crust than it is to like some of the more, refined pizzerias we have around town these days. But for some reason, that place just has such a hold on the heart of Angelinos, especially here in Northeast LA.
That's all true for sure. And you know, that's what's interesting when you get into the breakdown of the crust, you know. And that's when like you wonder like how much like regional differences like affect our opinions as far as that goes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean with you know, Chicago pizza crust, obviously you got the deep dish, which is like a whole nother thing. But the other thing, as I'm sure you know, is coming more into attention lately is like the tavern style pizza or the bar
Yeah.
pie or whatever, and that's a very like crunchy crust too as well, you know. So and Casabianca is neither one of those things in that
Yeah.
respect. So I could see maybe how somebody from Chicago, I don't know the gentleman, but might not be down for something like that as far as that goes.
That tavern style, it's being so popularized now thanks to the the patron saint of trends, Kenji Lopez-Alt. Great respect for him. Which was a great piece, by the way. We'll link it in the show notes. But absolutely, I'm still waiting for really good tavern pie in Los Angeles. Have you had any?
I haven't, but did you know? Maybe you're aware of this. Michael, who does Comfy Pup, he started
Yeah.
doing a few different. I think he's popping up out of his house again, doing some versions of it. I haven't had a chance to get down there because I think it's a very small window on Friday in Hollywood that you have to sign up to get there. But I'm super curious. Um, I did. This was a long, long time ago, but Prime Pizza did a
Mhm.
collab with what's his name? The guy who worked for Roberta's, Anthony Falco. He
Mhm.
came to town once and was making these making bar pies at Prime Pizza as part of a pop up. This was like 6 or 7 years ago, so it's not like anybody can go out and try this right now. But I remember those being really phenomenal when I tried that for the first time, and I was following Anthony's work and the fact that he came to town. I was just down to try anything that he had, given he was kind of his involvement with Roberta's, which I was obsessed with, when I first heard
Yeah.
about it, as far as that goes. And this was before they came to LA and all that.
Right.
So,
I went to Anthony Falco's restaurant in Vegas, Super Frico. Have you heard of it?
oh, yes, I have. I follow him on Instagram, so I think I remember him posting about it. What was that like?
It was weird, man. Weird in a way,
Yeah.
like, you absolutely have to go next time you're there. They call it
Okay.
psychedelic Italian is what they call it. And, it definitely leans a bit more like these trendy red sauce places, like, obviously Carbone, but also like La Dolce Vita that just opened in Beverly Hills, right? Definitely it's in that family of restaurants, but they have like performances that are happening around you all dinner. And
Mm.
it is wild. Like you feel like you're in some sort of acid trip, and the food is actually pretty decent. So the food and entertainment value, plus they have this whole like table side mozzarella shtick. It's Vegas, but it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, where is it located in Vegas?
I think it's at the Cosmo.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because I know they've been very receptive to bringing in like a lot of like outdoor. Like I think was that where Dave Chang had something
Yeah.
at one point or something like that, and then I think Egg Slut had their location there for a while. I'm not totally sure if they're still there, but I mean, you say, I mean, psychedelic red sauce, so that makes sense for Vegas. I mean,
It does.
why not just stick to what you're good at? Lean into it. So
100%.
no, that sounds cool. I would totally check that out for sure. I'm not a big Vegas guy, but for something like that, I would definitely check it out.
I am a big Vegas guy, but not for like the traditional reasons. It's mostly just to like
Okay.
go and try out restaurants like this. Enough about my
Yeah.
vices. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about let's talk about where you grew up in LA, Whittier, and
Yeah.
let's start there. So you're bred and born Angelino. Well, what do
Yeah.
we call people from Whittier?
I mean, I have referred to him before as Whittiots, but some people took issue with that, so I don't say it too often. But I don't know what they would call us per se. But yeah, so I grew up in Whittier. We moved from. I have a younger brother. He was born in Louisiana, actually. But I was born in San Diego. My parents were college professors, so my dad was looking for tenure track positions, basically, and we ended up in Whittier. There's a small private liberal arts college, which I attended also
Mhm.
there. And for those who aren't familiar with Whittier, it's kind of on the border of LA and Orange County. So it's really interesting place because it's further east of East LA and places like Montebello and Pico Rivera, and then on the other side you have the gateway to Orange County, La Habra, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of its own thing, or maybe sort of a no man's land in that respect. It's very historic too. I think the town was like founded in like the late 1800s or something. There's a small business district that's central to the downtown area called Uptown. There's a lot of restaurants and record stores and movie theaters and all that kind of stuff. So if you're like familiar with these small SoCal towns, you'll it's kind of a main drag area, and that's where around where my parents' house was and where I spent a lot of time. That's where I had a lot of my first jobs, both in restaurants and record stores. So you can kind of see where the trend starts there as far as that goes. Um, Big Latino population as well. I think it's a little over uh, more than the half the population now, as far as that's concerned. So you're getting lots of that because I mentioned the relation to East LA. There's a lot of folks who come from sort of these working class backgrounds and then move to places like Whittier because there's it can sort of higher tax brackets and bigger houses and all that kind of stuff. So um, lots of different things happening there as far as food and culture is concerned. But when you're a young person growing up, it can feel sort of far removed from lots of stuff too as well,
Yeah.
which is definitely something that I sort of experienced, and it wasn't until I graduated from high school and started driving, I was like, get me the hell out of here. I need to go to Hollywood. I need to, start driving to all other places of SoCal to, find out what else is going on because, I'm kind of done with it here. My relationship with it is evolved definitely over the years. I'm in my 40s now. So, things that you think were kind of bad before, like in your 20s or something like that, you might have a little bit of a softened image. But it's funny that you mentioned Jay Gold earlier because he actually came to Whittier a bunch of times and wrote about some of the restaurants there,
What
and
were his favorites?
that had so that's a good question. I was just talking about this with somebody recently, and they actually somebody who's teaching a class in food writing at the college, and they were kind of picking my brain over stuff. The two that I remember the most vividly, there was one called there was this one restaurant, Southeast Asian restaurant called the Golden Triangle, and it
Mm,
was a combination of Thai, Burmese, and Laotian food, and it was run
hmm.
by a couple. It is no longer there, unfortunately, but Jay Gold like hopped on that as soon as they opened and wrote this really glowing review in the LA Weekly. I think it was like 94, 95 or something like that. So we're going way back. You could still find
So
the
this was
review online if you're interested.
Yeah, so
Um,
this was LA Weekly because his career was like LA Weekly, LA Times, LA Weekly, LA Times, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, then he was at Gourmet, I think, at one
Right.
point for a while there when he was in. I think he went to New York. He was in New York, which is just crazy to think about. Working under Ruth Reichel
That's a
during that time,
documentary
and
right there.
yeah, 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 and always that she. I remember her talking about how he never turned in his stories on time, which I always think is funny. Uh, so because you probably nobody was ever mad at him for doing that. They're like, "What are you gonna
Yeah.
do?"
As an
So
editor yourself now, do you ever have writers that give you the excuse, well, Jay Gold never turned his pieces in on time?
not yet, but if probably after they hear this podcast, they probably will throw that at me.
Yeah.
So I'll be
You're
like,
welcome.
come
You're
back with,
welcome, staff at the
yeah,
LA. You're welcome.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, come back with a Pulitzer, and then maybe we can talk about it. But so but he did this really interesting thing in that review. And again, I would encourage other people to talk about it. Is he did this really good job at like summing up the town, and because um, MFK Fisher actually was from Whittier as well.
No
Another
way.
famed. Yeah, yeah. She grew up there, and her family's house was there, and all that. And so he mentions that. He mentions Richard Nixon, which was also from LA, or from Whittier too. And like he just did this beautiful job at like summing up the town so perfectly. And it was like he was still able. he visited this place and he was still able to kind of like see all the local history, for it, and really kind of contextualize it so beautifully. And that definitely like had an impression on me, even as a young person, because it was like, oh, this is something you can do and you can see, this place for what it is essentially, and
Yeah.
it just made all of those feelings that I was describing before, being like kind of like, this is the suburbs, it's boring, all this kind of stuff. It was like, here's this guy that came here and wrote about the town and saw it for all its merits, and
Yeah.
as I grow older, I just start to realize how special and important that is, and I'd be lying if I wasn't trying to do that in my own writing and my own coverage, as far as that goes. So that was kind of like the go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, when you think of your influences as a food writer, would you say that
Yeah.
he's up there? Anyone else? Anyone else come to mind?
Oh man, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, he's definitely up there, but I also feel like that's kind of a cop out for any writer from LA, as far as that
Yeah.
goes, I mean, it's like, of course he is, and I mean,
For any food
I,
writer in the United States, honestly, the whole, like, ethos of going to a place, telling the story, bringing you in, the use of the word "you" and all of that sort of, like,
yeah.
scene setting, I think that's ubiquitous now, and it wasn't before him, and I don't think the layperson maybe realizes that.
Right, right. Yeah, totally. And yeah, now you got me thinking like who else is out there, that had a strong influence on me as far as that goes, I mean, it's hard to say, I mean, I was definitely influenced by him, but also just like those alt weeklies of the day at the time. We had LA
Mhm.
Weekly, but then I also read OC Weekly a lot too, which is
Yeah.
sadly no longer with us either. And they would do these really amazing food lists, that was just like, it was literally just like a running list of like the best things they ate that year or something. They did. I think they got to like 100. I hope I'm framing this correctly, but and I think Gustavo Ariano was the editor at the time too as well. And there's this one specific instance that I remember really loving is that he wrote this entry about the bean and cheese burritos from Del Taco, and just talking
Ooh.
about just I mean, I'm a bean and cheese burrito stand for life,
Hell
so
yeah.
and
No,
and
they are the pizza margarita of burritos, like, you can
they
judge
are
any
they
place
are
based on their bean and cheese.
That's an excellent, excellent metaphor for sure. Yeah. And so I just remember reading that. I think Gustavo wrote that. And I was just like, this is amazing. Like you with food writing, if you can explain yourself well enough, you could do whatever the fuck you want.
True.
And that was so empowering to me, at the same time, because you know it just kind of blurred the lines of both the high and the low, as it were, and it made it, all that more special, because anybody can hop in the drive through line at Del Taco and experience, a similar type of bliss, as it were, and I just love that, I
Yeah.
try to embody that in my own coverage, and I want everybody to kind of experience, something similar to that. So
So it seems like you had these 2 dual passions growing up, if I'm characterizing this correctly, of food and music, and how did you, like, I mean, it seems like it's funny because it feels like you actually didn't have to choose in the end between the 2. Uh, but was there a point when you felt like you had to choose and you went with one over the other?
no, I don't think I did, I don't think I ever did, and like you said, maybe I never will either.
Yeah,
So it's hard to say exactly kind of where one started and the other one, picked up as far as that goes. But with the music thing, I was big into like making like mixtapes in high school and what have you, like, and I would get really, really into it, Luca. Like, I'm like, it would be like obsessive almost in that respect. And almost to the point where it was like, I wasn't I definitely wasn't paying enough attention in my classes, but if I
Right.
was making a mixtape for a girl or something like that, I would be like, this is my purpose, and it
Right.
was just
Right.
like, it was just the language that I really felt, like I felt best suited, that were representative of who I was at the time,
Can I ask,
and go
do
for it.
you think do you think anybody ever put the thought into your mixtapes that you put in when they were receiving it? They
Hell
were like,
no,
"Oh, I
hell
think I
no,
think he picked this because of, XYZ, or he's trying to
no.
tell me this." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not, And, I still make mixes to this day, and I've lessened up a little bit because, okay, again, I'm going to kind of date myself here as far as, making mixtapes are concerned. I'm using analog tapes, I'm
Yeah,
recording
wow.
CDs onto analog tapes as far as that goes. So,
We just lost
order
like
of
half our
songs,
listeners.
I know, I know. They're like, "What the fuck is this?" I thought we were talking about food, but the order of the songs were definitely more important because it's you couldn't hit shuffle back in the days as far
Right.
as that goes. So I would get super, super into the order of the songs, where to the point it would almost be like a DJ. You figure out the song that goes into the other in sort of sequential action. Uh, and so that was a big deal to me. I still make mixes today, like I said. I'm a little more lenient, because you start to realize that the order of songs don't matter as much, to somebody who's just sort of coming to at it casually. Um,
Or
so
has
have a little more
shuffle.
fun with it. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other thing. So the mixes that I try to make these days, like on Spotify and everything, I try to make them so you can shuffle them. So all the songs work no matter uh, which direction you're playing them in, I guess. So,
Okay, now my
but
bucket list is to listen to a Gab Chabran mix on Spotify. See what we're
oh
dealing
yeah,
with here.
I got you. I got you. I got you. You got a spare 8 hours? I got you. So yeah, yeah. So usually though, what I try to do is I put it. I do take into the fact that you're listening to them in the background. So we recently, my brother was in town from New York, and we recently rented a Duffy boat. I don't know if you've ever done that. One of those little
Mm-mm.
drive it yourself boats. Oh, highly
Oh yeah,
recommend
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. We did it
Yeah,
in I think
yeah.
we did it in Long Beach.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That's where we did it here too, and I made a mix for that, and so it's perfect for just sort of gallivanting around and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. I
yeah, I
recently
try
made
it.
a couple mixes for my wedding, and
Oh okay,
we I tried to do it like, for the cocktail hour, like the right vibe, and
yeah,
then for the welcome party, this vibe, and then for sitting down to dinner.
yeah.
I shit you not, I did not notice one single song the entire time, and I don't think anybody else did either. And I spilled hours and days, honestly,
Yeah,
into those mixes.
yeah. I feel you on that one. I did something similar for our wedding too as well, and I think the wedding, there's so much going on, it just goes by in a second as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So but you had to get those creative juices out somehow.
At what point do you get into
Yeah.
food?
Well, that's the other thing. So food was always kind of there as well. As I mentioned before, my parents were college professors and they hung out with a lot of other college professors. And we would end up going to a lot of different, I guess what we would call them ethnic cuisine spots, in and around the area. So I was visiting dim sum spots probably at like 5 years old,
Wow.
and so and these were like old school joints where the push carts, and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, and getting that whole experience. I think I went to an Indian restaurant really young too, maybe like around 8 or 9 or something. um, and it was a lot of these experiences that you don't realize in retrospect that they were different from, say, some of your peers at the time, and they just felt normal in that respect. And it wasn't until later, when you start talking to other people, you realize how unique that was in terms of an upbringing, as far as that goes. So it was mostly casual spots, I mean, they weren't super fancy by any standards, but that, you already start to form opinions about things, about what's good, and trying different things. It always felt like my parents, even though they never said it in so many words, that you know, trying to get us out of the comfort zone of trying all these different foods, and what have you. So yeah, it was always kind of a large part in terms of, like I said, my upbringing and what have you.
And did you always have your eyes set on writing in some shape or form, whether it was food writing, music writing?
You know, um, Not necessarily, I mean, I'll be completely honest, there was definitely a time in my life where like writing wasn't something that came easy to me,
Mhm.
It's definitely a craft that I've had to hone, over a time period, I wasn't naturally born a writer by any standards, um, yeah, I probably have, every learning disability that you could, list, dyslexia, all that stuff. I've never been like formally diagnosed, but I mean, those are all issues that I had to deal with, as far as school
Yeah.
goes, and
Yeah, yeah.
in school, it's very formalized and, you're meeting certain criteria and all those kinds of things. And so, like, from a creative perspective, that can feel sort of damaging, I guess, in that sense, because it
Yeah.
was like, shit, you got all these great ideas, but you don't always, you can't always express them correctly, in that respect. So it wasn't one of those things. It was one of those things that I kind of dabbled in throughout my life, but it wasn't until well into adulthood did I really start to devote myself to the craft in that respect, and that's really just like spending a lot of time doing it, and anytime,
Yeah.
as you know, that once you start spending a lot of time doing it, that you'll start to see those results, I guess, so I guess it
Yeah.
was the passion that really kind of, continued to sort of ignite it in that respect.
And was it a passion for the subject matter, like the food and the music, that sparked this other passion for the writing, or did you start to develop an organic passion for writing and then you're like, what do I want to write about?
I think it was the underlining passion for culture as a whole, So I
Yeah.
mean, music and food are definitely part of that, but art, film, all of that stuff, literature, reading, all that kind of stuff. Always been a big reader, that kind of thing, and so it is through all of that, and having a lot of exposure through all those different, avenues that you just kind of program your brain to start thinking a certain way, I guess,
Mhm.
and the best outlet I found for that was writing, and
Yeah.
really, I've always described myself as sort of an ideas man, and in that respect, writing served as the outlet in that respect. And I look for other idea people, people who have great ideas, and are looking to kind of apply them in different ways, and food's a great example of that. So is
Yeah.
music, any sort of creative expression, as it were, I think always sort of presents interesting results. And thereby, you can, write something cool about it, or provide
Yeah.
some cool coverage as far as that goes.
What did you first start writing about in the big world of culture?
Well, that's a good question. I guess music came first, because I started writing for a publication called LA Record, and which is,
Mhm.
I believe, still around. And I was writing concert reviews, and this was kind of when I moved to LA so I could get kind of closer to the action, as it were, as I thought at the time, and I knew the editor, and basically, they was like, you can sign up to cover a show, and they get you into the show for free, and then you write, 100 words on it. And I was just like, are you kidding? Like, this is great, like, this is all I've ever wanted to do, like, I get, it felt sort of exclusive, to be honest with you, the fact that I could,
100%.
you know I could get on a guest list, and cover a show. um
All the plebs are waiting in line and you show up with like your, "Hey, my name's on the list."
Right, right. Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing I forgot to point out too as well, I worked at a record store in between or during high school and college. And so I was already starting to like rub elbows with like industry folks, like record label people, and getting into shows that way and all that kind of stuff. And so it was really like between that and starting to write about the shows, um, that I really felt a knack for it, in that respect. And it was also during the time where I was trying to take in as much music as possible, and just learn about all the different types of music, that were coming to town as well, which made for a great experience.
What kind of concerts were you going to?
I graduated high school in 2001, so I mean, we were looking at a lot of uh, I guess I would like Bloghouse. I don't know. Are you familiar with this term, Bloghouse, as far as that goes?
Give me give me an example.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like, well, there's a few different ways to explain it, but it's kind of like, so indie rock is definitely like a place card, in the conversation. There was also like this period of like dance punk, or like post punk
Mm.
slash dance punk.
Yeah,
So it's like, so there was some of that going on as well. This is like when bands like, the Rapture and like LCD Sound System and all the DFA stuff was like
right.
coming really into a heavy rotation. And then if you're an LA head, there was this band called the Moving Units, who I think still sometimes play shows also as well. They were really into like the post punk sound, as well. And there was also like this, as a result, like dipping into this area of electronic music too as well. And like you have like electro clash, and then that travels into like things like, Kid Cudi songs getting remixed by like Justice and all that kind of stuff. Like
Oh,
that was
yeah.
very like much my era. There's actually a really good book about this, written by Lena Abascale. And I have to give Lena a shout out because she just wrote a piece for us on supper clubs. And she has this book called Never Be Alone Again: How Bloghouse United the Internet. And it really kind of captures, that moment in time, which I feel like is kind of a little bit forgotten these days, but at the time was like super important to me and my friends, as it were, and I mean, this is also the same time as like the Strokes and all of that too as well, so
Right.
we're all
That's
wearing,
who was coming to my head in terms of
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
When you said
yeah.
2001, I was like, who was
Right.
like huge in 2001,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of that, and that's when I was driving out to Hollywood a lot from, Whittier, and, trying, going to Amoeba, going through all the used CD racks, buying the promo CDs for half the price of the new ones, and that kind of stuff. Going to places like the Knitting Factory. There was a Knitting Factory location in Hollywood, which is no longer there, that I spent a shitload of time at back in the day, which was super crazy, given that it was just a random location for a concert venue, but saw a lot of good shows there. So,
Wow. And so that was your so that was your first technically quote unquote paid gig. as a writer? Because your
Actually,
remuneration
it
was
wasn't even paid. It wasn't even paid. My payment was I got into the shows, Luca.
right.
That was like,
Yeah,
this is what you get for that. So, but that was like those were my first bylines,
yeah,
as it
yeah.
were. So,
I'm sure they thought of tickets as remuneration in their day. And were you like, I can actually make a living off of this?
so that didn't probably come later until I started writing for LA Taco. So, uh, I reached out to Javier Cabral,
Yeah.
editor of LA Taco, who's since become a good friend of mine and is now also a fellow resident of Long Beach here.
I'm dying.
And
I was
I
gonna say, I
reached,
feel like there's like a little Long Beach mafia happening down there, but I'm dying to read his book, the Asada book. That thing looks incredible.
yeah, yeah. I was just flipping through a copy of it yesterday. It's a beautiful book. Yeah, I haven't bought a copy yet, but if it's anything like Oaxaca, I'm sure it has some super great stuff in there. So I reached out to Javier and we got to know each other, and had a couple beers and just started to, hit it off. And at the time, he started to work for Munchies as the West Coast editor. So Munchies, the online food publication arm of Vice at the time, he
Mhm.
became the West Coast food editor as well, and he encouraged me to start pitching there. Um, so I ended up pitching a story that was too overly ambitious, for me to get it all done. Um, so I didn't end up getting
What was
published,
it?
but my dad, so I mentioned he's a college professor. He travels a lot back and forth to Spain. He does a lot of like
Mhm.
scholarly work there and all that kind of stuff. And I was there at the time visiting, and I noticed that craft beer was like popping off at the time. So this was kind of like post, like when craft beer started to pop off here in the States, but in Spain it was kind of like this new and exciting thing. And the pitch was regards to craft beers popping off despite that the Spanish economy had just gone through some like really terrible shit. So I was trying to paint this piece about Spanish beer culture in light of the economy. But the problem was I was only there for like 2 weeks, and then I tried to write the article once I came back, and it was a fucking mess. Like trying to communicate with the folks back and forth, through email, time changes, all that kind of stuff. So it didn't actually end up happening, but but I learned a lot from that experience, as
Yeah.
far as that goes. And later on down the line, I started to. Javier was guest editing, I think, at the time with LA Taco, uh, and he was filling in for Danielle Hernandez, who is
Mhm.
now one of the editors with LA Times under the food section. So they were kind of like dual editing. And since I knew Javier, I was able to kind of get in there and start pitching ideas. I think the first story that I did for them, you'll appreciate this. It was a breakfast burrito list along York Boulevard. So I wrote about all the
Oh,
different
nice.
breakfast burritos on York. Yeah.
We're talking about
Um,
Hugo's, Delia's. What are we talking about?
Delia's, yeah. I think I had Troy Burger on there. Are you?
Oh,
Do you?
no way.
Yeah, Troy Burger. Pennies. I had pennies
Pennies,
on
yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah. I think I cheated a little bit and wrote about Pete's Blue Chip up on Colorado and Eagle Rock too, as well,
Yeah.
because I was obsessed with that one for a while. So I'm trying to think. I think I wrote about Highland Cafe too. I don't know if that
Oh,
place is
yeah,
still
they've got
there.
one. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
still
yeah.
popping.
Yeah, the chilaquiles breakfast burrito is the one that I wrote about. Yeah, so I did that. I just started writing lists, basically, and it was like I was never the type of writer that was like, "Oh, I'm above a list," because it
Yeah.
feels like sometimes in food journalism, people are like, "Oh, I only write these long form pieces," and all of that. And to me, I never gave a fuck. I'm like, you know what? If you need me to write a list, I'll write a fucking list. And it was fun for me. I mean, they're a lot of work.
Totally.
Especially when you start to get in like the double digits of these lists, as far as that goes. But
Well, also if
it's
you
a
wanna do it right, lists are a dicey game too because when you're putting them out into the world, there's always, by definition, people who are gonna be excluded and people who are gonna be pissed off. So you really
oh
need to,
yeah,
like, and that doesn't happen with a regular review because if you're not reviewing a place, that they might just hang on to the fact of, oh, it's that restaurant's time now, my time may come. But if you're doing the best breakfast burritos and their motherfucking breakfast burrito isn't on it, that's like an
oh yeah.
indictment in and of itself.
This is something I would imagine that you can speak from experience, given your lists as far as that goes, and
I
and your lists are super extensive as far as that goes, and I'm sure you still hear it from people.
I don't know what you're talking about. All the sandwich makers of Los Angeles are incredibly gracious people.
Well, I mean, no, not even the sandwich makers. I'm sure just the sandwich consumers themselves.
Oh my
Uh,
god, the
well,
consumers are worse than the yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the consumers that are worse than the makers. People take these, like, tribal allegiances, to their
yeah,
local sandwiches, pizzas, tacos. Yeah, that's why at first I never did, like, the best of lists, but I started last year with tacos, and let me tell you, I'm not gonna say it was a mistake because I stand by my list, but, certainly it was a way to set some TikTok threads on fire.
yeah, it was a learning experience, I'm sure. I
Yeah,
like, I like how you started with tacos. You just went for you went
jugular,
dove in the
yeah,
deep end as far as that goes. Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome, and shout out to your good work too, man. I really enjoy your content on TikTok and all that kind of stuff, and you do a really great job at packaging it nicely, and I think you're doing a good service out there. So,
Dude, thanks.
big fan.
You can come back to this podcast anytime.
All right, cool, cool. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Uh,
Um,
uh, yeah, so we're at
so yeah.
LA Taco lists.
Yeah, yeah. So gradually, so for breakfast burritos, I started to do pizza, and then it was just like coming into like different types of pizza. And then what I was trying to do with like some of these pizza lists that I was doing for LA Taco was I started to um I started to look for places where you could find like regional ethnic specialties, but like on pizzas, and or find something interesting and unique about them. And I mean, these weren't by any means like super hot places by any
Yeah.
standards.
Like Thai
Um,
curry pizza
it
in your hood?
exactly, yeah, yeah, exactly. And even less so than that too. There's a spot in Altadena. What the fuck's it called?
780
That does
it's not
this.
786 degrees, is it?
No, 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 no.
Oh,
It's
Prince
called
of Venice?
yeah, Pizza Venice. Pizza Venice.
Pizza of
Yeah,
Venice, that's
yeah,
what it is.
yeah. And they do like these. Shout out to Pizza Venice. Apologize for not remembering the name off the top of my head. It's been a minute. But if you ever get a chance, I don't know if you've been out there, but they do these really beautiful like crispy pies, and it's just like weird, uh, like
They
they're
put,
just
like,
having fun with
salads
it,
on them. Yeah, yeah, they
yeah,
do a lot of
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And this was like 5 or 6 years before, the salad pizza was a concept, and occasionally they would like smoke some ribs, that you could get. And then even back in the day at that point, it was BYOB, and there was a liquor store like in the strip mall, and we would just go and
Mhm.
like buy like tall cans and just like eat pizza in the parking lot, and underneath the sunset against the Sierra
Mountains.
Madres. It's just like
Yeah,
fuck, like this is what it's all about. Like why wouldn't
life
you
was good.
you know it, Yeah, it felt like a poetic experience, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
you could find this like beauty in, this simple experience, and it would just, it felt right, and it felt like it was worth capturing and talking about, and so I could
Absolutely.
do that in a couple paragraphs, for a list. And I was like, yeah, this is what it's all about, so I was able to really kind of take the ball with it and run. And that made a huge difference. And so after a while, I'm just like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to kind of keep pitching, uh, like, cause how do you stay in the game? You just keep practicing,
Yeah.
and that was it for me. It was like a form of like strength conditioning, as
Hmm.
it were. Here we go back to the biohacking, but but like it was literally just like do it over and over and over and over again, and keep pitching ideas, and people always ask me, well, how do you get started in this field and all this kind of stuff, and you just got to keep doing it, you
Yeah.
just got to keep pitching ideas, and your ideas are going to get turned down, and that's okay, you learn something from that experience and you go back and you try again,
Yeah.
and each time you get a little bit better in that respect. So sorry, I thought I would just throw that in there for anybody who's curious.
Honestly,
So
that's great advice. I think especially in this field, which is such a difficult field to break into, a lot of people look at it and are like, "Oh, well, it's impossible. There's no way to get in." But also on the flip side, we have more tools available to us than ever before to actually just go out and do the damn writing or do the damn, posting or podcasting, whatever it is. And so I think that's great advice. Just get out there and do it, And then if it's meant to be, it'll turn into something. And if not, you're still doing what you love.
right, exactly, yeah. And if you don't love it, then it's not for you,
Yeah.
in that respect, and that's a surefire way to find out in that respect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me ask you about LAist. So now you've made the move over to LAist. How
Mhm.
did that come about?
Yeah. So after I started pitching to LA Taco, then I started thinking, okay, how am I going to start to branch out? Because LA Taco is great and all that. Love LA Taco, love everything they do. But like, if I want to make a name for myself, I really want to start getting out there more, And LAist was one of the first places after LA Taco that I started pitching to,
Hmm.
and so I was actually a freelance contributor to LAist for a while. And in addition to LAist, then I started pitching to Thrillist. I started pitching to Eater LA. And it just kept turning into different opportunities as far as that goes. So the freelance career from start to finish lasted about 5 years, roughly. Okay.
Yeah.
I was still working a full-time job at a nonprofit at the time too, as well,
No
because I
way.
needed to pay bills, obviously. Yeah. So I was essentially doing two jobs, Luca. So like we're talking, I would work a full 8-hour day and then I would come home and write for another 2 or 3 hours. And then weekends would usually be devoted to doing that shit, either scouting or writing on the weekends too, as well.
And to be
And
clear,
you know what?
you're successfully married as well. This is like.
This is all throughout the course of us getting married. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was
Oh my
it was
God.
roughly
Yeah.
around that time. When we talk about it in retrospect, it sounds like a lot, but
Yeah.
as I was doing it, I was happy. I was like, this is what I should be doing. There was never a doubt in my mind, that I'm like, I should stop this. like like I really enjoy doing this. So
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, so just and I was always compelled to keep going as far as that goes. There was never a moment where I was like, this is too much or anything like that. So I somehow trained my brain, just to kind of work it and do as much as I could as far as that goes. I don't know if I recommend that to everybody, you know? I mean, this is just kind of who I am and how my brain works. Everybody's path's a little bit different, you know? But that's just what worked for me at the time, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that right now, you know, now that I'm a little bit older, but at the time, you know, I had enough sort of, you know, energy in me to kind of keep that going. So, but the goal was always to build enough work, you know, that I could refer back to, you know,
Totally. A portfolio.
in that respect. Exactly, exactly. Now, what that portfolio was, I don't know. You know, I didn't really have like an end game per se, but like I'm just going to keep doing this, you know, because it feels right in that sense. So, I ended up doing so I was networking with different people, had given the fact that I was working through all these different publications. And then at one point, somebody who I met through LA Taco, another guy by the name of Eric Galindo. Eric Galindo, he's a podcaster, he's a writer, he's a journalist. He's also a really good friend of mine. Um, he hit me up one day and was like, "Hey, are you interested in doing something for the New York Times?" And I was like, yeah, like what is it? And basically what it was is and this wasn't actually that long ago. What it was is to go, it was for the style section of the New York Times, and it was to go to the LA Coliseum when Kanye and Drake were doing a performance together. And it was for it was supposed to be like a fundraiser for this guy named Larry Hoover, who they felt was put in jail unjustly.
Oh,
And
yeah,
they had
yeah,
done
yeah,
like a
yeah.
merch line and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so what my job was is I had to go out there and interview all the fans outside and
Mhm.
talk to them about their clothes and, you know, just get some biographic information and all that kind of stuff. That was a really weird experience, you know, for a lot of reasons. Because first of all, I'm outside with a photographer, this guy named Carlos Jaramillo, who's a great photographer, by the way. Shout out to Carlos. Check out his Instagram. He does really good work. And we were taking photos of all these fans, and I was like, "Hi, I'm from the New York Times," and I was just like, "This feels so fucking weird." And I was talking to all these kids, dripped head to toe, and like, you know, ski masks, and you know, and they could
What
care
are you
less,
wearing?
you know. I don't know. I think I was wearing like a plaid shirt, you know, some
Yeah,
jeans and some
yeah.
hokas, you know, something maybe
So
a
you
bomber
were,
jacket, you know.
pardon the term, you were a little, they may have described you as chuggy.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. No, I'll wear my Chugi badge proudly as far as that goes. So, so I ended up getting the byline section in the, or I ended up getting the byline for the style section in the New York Times. It was a digital only story, but I had to write the thing in one night. Basically, the
Wow.
concert was the night before. I stayed up until 3 a.m. writing it, and then it ran like the following afternoon or something like that. So it was a really crazy experience, but I kind of knew that once I did this, that like this something's going to change, you know, as far
Yeah,
as that
I mean,
goes.
it's the majors. I mean,
Right,
all love to like LA Taco and Eater who do
sure.
such important work, but you know, doesn't get any bigger than the New York Times.
Right, right. And so I was like, as long as I do this, you know, then you know some doors are going to open. No, and I didn't know what those doors were by any standards, but I was just like, we're just going to do this, you know. So again, at no point when I'm staying up until 3 a.m., you know, typing this thing out, you know, was I like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, I'm just like, no, we're
Yeah.
doing this. I was determined, you know. There's this crazy amount of drive that I felt. So, so I did that and got the byline, and then that was kind of like in December or something like that. And then the next year, then I got the call that they were looking for a food editor for LAist, and so I started that process. to
Yeah.
get in. So, and it was a long process too, as well. You know, multiple interviews and all that kind of stuff. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. So that's kind of
And
where
when
I ended
and
up,
when the
where I am
call
right now.
came when the call came,
Mhm.
were you like, "This is it. This is the invitation I've been waiting for, all that drive. It could be paying
Yeah.
off right now."
Yeah, definitely. Cause it was just like I had been working so hard at that point, you know, and like COVID and all of that stuff was going on at the time as well. You know, we were kind of like just coming off of like peak COVID stuff, you know, so the world felt really strange, you know, and like so much had changed, you know, and I think that that's also when I realized, like, I was like I mentioned, I was working that full time nonprofit job where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, I'm kind of done with this. You know, I'm kind of done pretending. I guess is the way that I would think
Mhm.
about it as. You know, um,
Yeah.
and so so when the offer came down, I was like, okay, this is it. You know, this is what we've been working for. So.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. It's a really cool story. You hear a lot of people be like, "Oh, well, I just fell into this, or this door led to this door, and door led to this door." But it's cool to hear your story of like tenacity, frankly, and just keeping at it and doing something out of love, and it, resulting in a change that sounds like has has worked out for you.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I feel very fortunate, you know, and part of my job with LAist now is that I also edit a lot of the freelance content as well, and so that's I feel like is an opportunity to kind of give back to the community that I was sort of born from in that respect, and I get to work with a lot of great writers themselves, you know, and so I take it very seriously in that respect.
That's dope. Well, that brings me to the thing I've been wanting to ask about LAist and sort of how you approach covering LA's wild, expansive food scene. I mean, obviously, you are one of a few players. There's the Infatuation, there's Eater, there's the LA Times, and everybody's trying to do something to stand out. I mean, the LA Times just recently went through a massive, rebrand and, kind of infatualization of their website a little bit. And,
Mm.
how do you think about your remit and what makes LAist unique?
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's an excellent question. So I have this mission statement up on LAist under my bio, and the first sentence of the mission statement I feel like pretty much encapsulates what I'm trying to say. And in it, I say my approach to the coverage is discover how food connects us to the ever so layer social fabric of Southern California, and how food tells the region's story. So for this past year, since I've been in this position, that's really been the impetus of my coverage. I try really hard to distinguish everything that we do, both from stuff that I write to our freelance coverage too, as well. I guess like I'm not trying to cover, you know, the majority of what's being covered. You know, I'm really trying to do this thing where I'm trying to go to places that aren't necessarily thought of a lot, you know, in that respect, because that's essentially what I came from. You know, that's the
Yeah.
coverage that I'm used to doing myself. You know, restaurant openings, we've done a few, you know, here and there, and that's great. You know, we did a freelancer by the name of Virali Dave. She's currently an interim assistant director at Eater. Before she was doing that, she wrote a really great piece for Piaggi Palace when they first opened. She's Indian American. Obviously, the owner of Piaggi is Indian American too, as well. So I thought this is a good combination right there for these folks to kind of, you know, bond and talk about their culture and like what it means to Los Angeles and all of that as far as that goes. So, you know, and those
Yeah.
I'll make certain exceptions for something, you know, where the stars kind of aligned like that. But I didn't cover, the opening of Mother Wolf. I didn't cover,
Good.
the 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 breakdown of horses, that's been happening these past couple months as far as that
Yeah.
goes. All that stuff's been covered, so
Yeah.
like what's the point of me doing that, I guess, in that
Then it
respect,
really just becomes like a rat race for clicks because you're all trying to do the same thing, and who can do it,
yeah.
a little bit more sensationally than the others as well. It can lead to some pretty bad outcomes.
Right, right. And I don't know, actually, it's funny. I wanted to mention the horses thing to you to just get your opinion on this. Um, and not that I've discussed this publicly anywhere else or anything like that, but did you feel like with the horses stuff that like it felt like New York people were more concerned with it than LA folks? What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I think all of the like 80% of the attention probably was coming from people outside of Los Angeles who were just thought the story was sexy, right? When you actually look at the details, yeah, there are some things that are, weird and quirky about it, but I don't know about you, but I feel like those kinds of issues are rampant in the industry in terms of like abuse and abuse in the workplace. And just because this one had happened to happen at one of the hottest restaurants in LA right now, which probably not coincidentally, is a place that when a lot of New Yorkers come to LA, it's one of the first places they go because it's like the hottest on
Right,
Instagram, right? Um,
right.
but yeah, it was just kind of like much ado about nothing. Like without the cat detail, I'm not sure that that would have been as sensational, right?
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. And I think the fact that they were going to open up a restaurant in New York probably had something to do with it too, as well. But it just felt like there was like a large population of like New York folks concerned over something that was happening here, which, God bless you guys. But I think we're all doing fine, with or without it.
Well,
So,
and I mean, we could have I think we're going to need to have a follow up podcast on New York's coverage of Los Angeles in general, because, nothing I
oh,
love
yeah.
more than New York Times pieces on our food scene.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. No, you could definitely do a whole special episode on that. Sorry, that was just
Yeah.
something that I had on my list that I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on, given I know that you're,
Yeah. It's funny though, because we didn't discuss it either on the podcast because of that reason. We were just like, we could talk about this for like 2 minutes and get into the sultry details and make some cat puns. But like ultimately, like it feels like a little bit preying on other people's pain. And ultimately it's not really emblematic of what matters on LA's food scene.
exactly. Yeah. I don't think it was really representative of the food scene as a whole. It's kind of this one sort of little detail that, happened that affects, all the people that go there. But I don't know if it's necessarily indicative of how people eat in LA, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's kind of so that's the part of the coverage. And if we can to maybe talk about the work that I do, cheap fast eats, that's part of what I'm working on with that too as well. I really try to capture, I try to go into these neighborhoods and talk about different places, and really try to show love for some of the cooks and chefs, that are behind the counter and doing, interesting and delicious things,
Yeah.
and there's so much out there, there's so much out there that's uncovered,
Yeah.
in that respect. And I think
And
I'm
for
sure
those
that,
who don't know, real quick, Cheap Fast Eats is a great series that LAist has done, basically going neighborhood by neighborhood, right?
yeah,
Showcasing
yeah,
exactly what the title says, right? Cheap Fast Eats.
yeah.
And you've done a
Yeah.
bunch. You recently did Silver Lake. You've been all
Yeah,
over
I'm
the place.
working on Inglewood right now. Working on Inglewood. That's the next one that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Culver City, downtown, Pasadena, Glendale, Long Beach. So trying to just kind of cover it geographically. I think Inglewood will be the eighth one. So soon, and I think by August, if we keep it up, we'll hit about 50 spots. And so
Wow.
the general impetus is we're trying to showcase spots that you can get a meal, a meal for around $10.
Mhm.
Sometimes it might be under, sometimes it'll be slightly over, but we try to keep it around there. So, um,
It's great too because you're
and
kind of meeting people where they are. I mean, with inflation, the economy, a little bit of uncertainty on that.
yeah,
It seems like a useful guide for people to have.
yeah, yeah, that's the whole point, and it's also if, you're in these areas, for the first time and you're looking to kind of get to know the community better, uh that, this is to try to serve as a guide, like with the Inglewood stuff, we've all been to the Forum or, or Hollywood Park, and that kind of stuff, but how much time do we actually spend in these communities,
Yeah.
and get to know them a little bit more instead of paying for a $25 hot dog, and a $16 beer that's filled to the brim that you spill immediately,
Don't
Um,
get me started.
I mean, yeah, I mean, all that's great, don't get me wrong, I'm right there for all that too, but like
Is it?
there's so much other stuff, out there. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is no knocks if that's what you want to do,
Right, 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 right. Yeah. If that's
if
how you
that's
wanna spend
if,
your money, that's fine. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you want to support a small independent business with deep ties to the community and is representative of, the folks that live there, then yeah, that's what we're trying to do with Cheap Fast Eats. So,
I'm sure you've already been in Inglewood, but have you been to Carnitas del Artista?
you know what? I just sat down with Gustavo earlier this week and we had a really
Oh,
nice little
nice.
conversation. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Gustavo is a total homie. And we had kind of known each other through passing a little bit. But this is the first time we kind of like sat down and broke bread and he laid the whole thing out for me. Got his whole life story. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if folks know this, in addition to Carnitas El Artista, but there's excellent Mexican food in Inglewood, some
Yeah.
really great trucks and puestos, in addition to, you, you know, um, the amount of black cuisine that's there too as well. So I
Yeah.
mean, huge, really great diversity out there that I recommend.
I
So
mean, an Inglewood food crawl between, like, the Doolin's, Coney Seafood, Carnitas del Artista, you can have some fun.
yeah, yeah, and then don't forget like the surrounding areas too. If you
Right.
want to, we're not covering this spot, but what is it? 106 Underground in Lenox. Are you familiar
Oh,
with that
yeah.
spot?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Where you go into his backyard and
Right.
enjoy some truly delicious mariscos, platters of delicious mariscos, is an
Yeah.
amazing experience, it's so comfortable and welcoming, and you get to watch, the jets land, as they come down from to touchdown at LAX, I mean, that's a quintessential Southern California experience as far as I'm concerned, enjoying bomb ass mariscos, in a backyard, while the planes from LAX
Yeah.
touchdown. I don't know. I think you can't
That
beat it. So,
Put that on a postcard. Honestly, New York Times, come write
yeah,
about that. Or I'm sorry, just New York media in general. Um,
exactly, exactly.
yeah.
So,
Uh, well, hey, I've kept you way longer than we had initially scheduled for. I wanted to finish with a quick challenge for you, which is, can you come up with a quick on the fly list of cheap fast eats in Beverly Hills, where I feel
oh
like
man,
the populace is really screaming out for cheap fast eats, you know?
are they? Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question because it's not an area that I'm super familiar with as far as that goes. Um, I would probably like cheat and like venture into like West Hollywood or something like that.
Yeah.
As far
Yeah.
as that goes. Um, I mean, aren't there some like good delis out there in like diner delis
Yeah, except
as
like
far as
these
that
days, a
goes?
deli sandwich is gonna run you like $25.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I find that the best, method is to stick with sort of a lunch special, That's when you're going to
Mm.
kind of get the most bang for your buck. And that's really aided me well, in the quest for cheap fast eats out there, as far as that goes. Would you say that's true in your sandwich research?
That the lunch specials is the way to go?
Yeah, 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 yeah. In terms of like keeping like your price point down.
Definitely. I think definitely if I'm going to a spot like a Nate and Al's or a Langer's or something like that, yeah, I think the
Hmm.
challenge with me is most of my spots are lunch spots, so they don't have
That's true.
that much variation. But a sandwich crawl is a great way to do some cheap fast eats. There's actually a couple new sandwich places I've been meaning to check out in Beverly Hills. They're gonna go above $10, but Lorenzo and Il Tramezzino, which is a little older, I think. But
Okay.
if I were looking for lunch special sandwiches in Beverly Hills, I think that's about as close to $10 as I could get, man.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's true. And I don't think you see any you don't see a lot of street food out in Beverly Hills, right? There's probably some like ordinances against that or something.
Yeah,
Knowing the
100%.
area
No,
as far as that goes. So
not unless you just count people walking around with their Alfred matchas, then no, there's no street food. Do you know where you
next
might find some luck though? Is the southern edge of Beverly Hills where it kind of like starts to venture into like Beverly Wood territory.
okay.
Um, I'm not like if I were to look for cheap fast eats, that's where I would look probably. Like, and again, it's probably cheating a little bit. It's probably not exactly what people think of as Beverly Hills, but that would be my where my money goes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's okay. I think, as long as you're operating within a radius, that's my rule of thumb. Also, something you just said too, sometimes when you hit the older spots, sometimes that's a lot of
Hmm.
the times where you can find the deals also too. Which I always try to hit up the older spots because I feel like you get a really good sense of where you're at when it comes to places
Yeah,
like that. So
it's true. Got to start with the great way to do it is sometimes start with the older spots, work your way to the new. I don't know if you agree.
yeah, no, definitely, definitely. I had this conversation with he runs a pop-up and he's also a good friend of mine, Jairo Boragin of Hamburgers Nice. It's a pop-up out here in Long Beach. If you haven't had a chance to try it, I would recommend it. But him and I, we have some great conversations over beer about just sort of the state of food. And I think I told him at one point that I didn't want to go to cool places anymore. I just wanted to go to like unhip places, and I think that's probably a little bit of what I'm trying to do with cheap fast eats. So
You're in the wrong place, though. I think a lot of cool stuff is coming to Long Beach right now, man.
it's true. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. We're getting a window now. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
means you.
that's pretty exciting.
That's late stage capitalism. You made it.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be
No,
there.
shout
I'll
out
be
to
there.
Window. I like Window. Nothing against them. Gob, thank you so much for giving so much time to this humble podcast. Any last final thoughts? Anything thing you want to plug before I unceremoniously kick you off?
Yeah. Just check us out on LAist, LAist/food or LAist/cheap fast eats. You can find us both. I'm on Instagram. Shoot me a DM if you have any tips or just want to talk about food or music. Super down. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
We'll put all those links in the show notes. So, dear listeners, if you're looking to get in touch with Gob or send any tips in, that's the place to look. Well, Gob, thanks so much for coming on, and thanks again for the Long Beach tips. Can't wait to go check them out.
Definitely, man.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks to our guest, Gab Chabran. If you like what you heard, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe if you should be so inclined. And if you're looking for me, you can find me on TikTok and on Instagram at the LA Countdown. That's TheLaCountdown. You can also find me on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFoodPod.